What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the You Tell Me Football podcast. Today, it's just me here with Matt Hayes. And let me say, if you don't know who Matt is and you know who I am, I don't know what the algorithm did. Something must have happened because Matt Hayes is an incredible guy. You should definitely go check out his channel. We'll have a link in the description, and I'll put a graphic right over here so you can see what his channel looks like. But when it comes to Spurs content and keeping up to date with everything Tottenham, including transfers and everything going on at the club, it's probably Fabrizio Romano, Alistair Gold, and Matt Hayes right up there, the big three. And you're for the fans, by the fans. Matt, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing a lot better after that introduction. I won't lie to you. Thanks a million for that. Thanks a million. I do appreciate it. It's been it's been an interesting day, but I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thanks a million for asking me to come on. It's an honor to be talking to you again.
Well, we're glad to have you. So Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, how did you get into football? How did you get into Spurs? And then how did you end up starting a YouTube channel?
Yeah, well, look, I've always been football crazy, like from the age of like 3, 4 or whatever. I one of the biggest annoyances my friends have with me is that I don't watch movies, and I've never really watched movies or kind of like these kids TV shows that they were like nostalgically think about, because when I was like 4 years age, I was sat in front of the TV watching Premier League years or something, just because all I ever wanted to do. Yeah, it's weird in hindsight, but all I ever liked was football, and I playing football outside with my friends, play with my local team, this and that, and just everything was revolved around football. So I was, from a young age, it's all I ever really enjoyed doing. And there will be pictures there that I at times will deny, but there are pictures there of me in a Liverpool kit, because my dad's a Liverpool fan. So before I was old enough to decide, what team I wanted to love, he was sticking that Liverpool jersey on me. I'll never forgive him for that. He brought me to Anfield, which was an interesting experience. All right, but when I think it would have been maybe 8 or 9, I was making my Holy Communion here in Ireland, and my aunt is married to an Englishman, and she was living over there with him, and they came over for it, and he came up to me. He's a season ticket holder at Spurs for decades. And he came up to me, he's like, "I'll give you £5 if you tell your dad you're a Spurs fan." So I was like, "Oh, fantastic. It's the easiest £5 I'll ever make in my life." So I went up to my dad and I said it to him. He got really annoyed at me. And he's like, "No, you're a Liverpool fan. You stop it." See, he doesn't like Spurs because he lived there for a while and was subjected to going to White Hart Lane in the 90s. So it wasn't exactly his favorite thing. So it just annoyed him so much that I kept on doing it, and I kept on going, and eventually it just stuck. And here I am like 13 years later, still a Spurs fan, still going through the pain and stuff like that. So it's an interesting start to the journey. But
hey, look, but you're here and you are so faithful to Spurs. That's one thing we all know. And so do you still is that kind of relationship with your dad? Do you still kind of go back and forth with all that? I mean, I can imagine the Champions League final meaning that much more when it's not just Liverpool and Spurs, it's also father and son.
Yeah, that was that was a tough day, I won't lie to you.
Did you watch together?
We did, yeah, we did. He had 2 of his friends over as well. One of them was a Liverpool fan, and one was an Everton fan. So obviously the Everton fan was on my side like that. But it was bad. It was it was actually like overall it was an upsetting experience. But I remember sitting down for the Liverpool played Barcelona in the semi-final the day before we played Ajax in the second legs. So we were sitting down there, and Barcelona obviously were winning 3-0 from the first leg, and like I don't like Liverpool. Like, just put that out there. I really don't like Liverpool. But just sitting there, with my dad having this experience when Liverpool got that first and second goal, I was kind of thinking, for him, I'd love to see them get through to the final. I was like, I kind of enjoyed that semi-final. Then we got to the next night, and Ajax, of course, 2-0 up at halftime. So I was like, I'll enjoy seeing Ajax beat them in the final. And then they turned that around, and he was enjoying it for me, getting to see me experience that comeback and things like that. And it was maybe 10 or so minutes after the end of the Spurs Ajax game, we're kind of still celebrating. We kind of turned and looked to each other like, like we're playing each other here. And we just knew, God, the next couple of weeks were interesting. Obviously, the banter back and forth was fantastic,
of course.
But the day of the game, there was certainly only one winner.
Totally. So is your dad willing to admit that the penalty on Sissoko was the softest penalty in the world? Is he willing to? No.
He's like every other Liverpool fan. It's stonewall penalty, blatant handball, this, that. He's one thing my dad is not when it comes to football is level-headed. So I don't think we'll ever get that sort of advice from him.
Oh, that's so funny. But that's awesome, though. It's cool that you at least you have that. You can kind of bond over it and get at each other's throats about it. That's all good stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're a Spurs fan. You've been following them for years. A YouTube channel, though, or the Matt Hayes Tottenham blog. How did that all come about?
That I actually started at the week of the Champions League final, so I think it was like the Tuesday before that final, because look, in Ireland, everyone is either a Liverpool fan or a Man United fan, and
Sure.
I'm not sure if it's the same over in the States, but there aren't many Tottenham fans around the place. So if I was going to school or something, it's not a Spurs fan I could have a chat with and kind of discuss Tottenham. So it was always when I came home, I'd burn my dad's ear off telling him about how Tottenham are going to sign Paulo Dybala. I swear it's going to happen. So it kind of got to the point where he was just like, I don't care. I don't want to listen to this. I want to talk about Liverpool. And I'd always had an interest in journalism. So I used to write for a Facebook page, and I was writing for a website and stuff like that. And I enjoyed writing, and I enjoyed kind of formulating these sentences and going back and finding a better way to say things to try and get my point across. But I always felt, if you have like a 600 word count, you can't say as much as what you want to say, really. So I was kind of looking for different ways to, say more in a shorter space of time, if that makes sense. And I'd never really been confident on camera, things like that. But my dad had kind of said it to me a few times. He's like, just sit in front of the camera, record something, put it up on the internet and see what happens. If people don't like it, they don't like it. You can take it down or whatever. But just see what happens. And it was the week before that final, we were looking to buy Jack Clark, and there's a few other rumors around this. So I was like, look, I love transfers. My favorite day of the year is deadline day. So I was like, look, I'll go on. I actually sat down on my bed, put my laptop on my lap, turned on the crappy webcam on it. And I was like, this is Jack Clark. I like him, this and that. And I put it up, and I haven't really looked back from there.
That's awesome. I love that. And I also feel like too, that was similar to me. I kind of got started during the pandemic. So I was just like looking for a way out of my own house and, just being stuck inside all the time, wanting to connect obviously about football and things. And I have found that people that especially Spurs fans are great in terms of talking across oceans or whatever it might be. There's just wonderful, wonderful people. So even though your dad did kind of say like, I'm sick of talking about Tottenham, there are literally thousands of people that are happy to hear you talk about Tottenham. And, and what a journey that has been. Tell us a little bit about that. Sorry, we lost you. That's okay.
My camera's dodgy. I'll try to get that fixed. It's been a bizarre journey on the YouTube in the last couple of months. It kind of started with the whole manager situation that we had going on, because as I'm sure everybody knows, there was quite a bit of interest in that for a couple of weeks. And I think I'd kind of ended the season around maybe 5,000 or 6,000 subscribers, which was more than I'd ever thought I'd kind of get. So that in itself, I was delighted with that and enjoying the kind of views and the interaction and the just everything that was kind of got around with that. And then we're in for Mauricio Pochettino, and I'm putting these videos up and like, this has happened today. And it got to the point within this managerial situation where I was uploading, probably doing a live stream in the afternoon and then at night as well, just because there were so many stories coming out the whole time. And that started getting a lot of attention. And then that kind of fell apart, and thinking, the journey was good while it lasted. But then the next week it was Antonio Conte, and and things really just started kind of blowing up from there. And there was a period where I would have got maybe 2,000-3,000 subscribers in a month. Wow! And now with the transfer situation with Christian Romero and with Lautaro Martinez as well, it's just everything's just kind of blown up, and it's just really strange to kind of experience and things like that.
Totally. So when you started, you weren't really thinking about having like a ginormous YouTube channel, but here you are. And I I think it was just not long ago, you had 1,000 people watching you at the same time. What is that experience like?
I'll be honest, it's quite weird. It's really strange. It happened for the first time, I think, maybe a week ago. But actually this morning as well, on my live stream for the Martinez breaking news, it went over 1,000 again. Wow. And it's a weird experience because, like, obviously I know there's 1,000 people watching there, but it's hard to kind of grasp that, because as I'm sure you know from streaming, like from what we see, it's just a number in the corner of a screen, and it just says it'll go 100, 200, whatever it might start growing from there. But it was only actually after that first stream that I was so lucky to have some fantastic guests on that stream with me to kind of add a lot more value to it. And it was only kind of afterwards I was sitting there, and I'd ended the stream and I saw there was still live viewers 1,050 or whatever, and I started dropping down, and we were done maybe 5-10 minutes. There's still like 400 people there. And I'm thinking, like, how is this actually happening? It's only then you kind of start to like visualize there's this many people kind of still looking back on things you've said and they've already heard you say, and it's it just is kind of hard to put it into context and actually realize what that means. But it's still a baffling number to me.
It's so awesome. And I feel like there's probably it's in the back of your head somehow, but it's still just you with your camera. Like there's some parts of it that still feel maybe very normal or very grounding. It's just, just you talking. But at the same time, it's crazy to think there's 2,000 eyeballs, 1,000 people watching you. That's pretty awesome. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had anyone catch you on the street and say, "Hey, Matt," and you have never met them before, but they have watched your YouTube channel? Has that happened yet?
It's happened twice, and
Twice?
it's the most surreal, bizarre, insane moment. Because like to me, I'm just this guy who likes Tottenham and chats crap about them on the internet every now and then. Like that's all I am to me, and I know to most people I'm that as well. But I was lucky enough to go over to the Carabao Cup final at Wembley for We Are Tottenham TV a few months back, and I was with David Harris, the Irish Hotspur, who I'm sure a lot of people know as well.
Oh yes.
And we went down to the Tottenham Stadium on a Saturday just to record a few bits and kind of have a look around for ourselves and go into the club shop or whatever. And we were just walking down the high road afterwards, and we actually, well, one of them kind of counts, one of them doesn't, because Chris Cowlin was there and he was recording his own stuff, and he noticed David from across the road, and he came over. We're having a chat with him for ages. But there's just a fan outside who, I'll be honest, noticed David before I did. Noticed David before he noticed me. I was kind of sitting there, like, he was a young kid, like, and he's there, and he's kind of like in shock at who he's seen, and I'm like, it's me, like, it's only me, kind of thing. But it was fantastic, kind of got pictures and stuff with him, and the same happened. Then the next day we went to Wembley Stadium for the final, and we were at an event a few minutes away, and we went there early, kind of recorded our own stuff, got on Sky Sports as well, which was crazy. And we were walking down to the event, and we went up right up to the stadium before turning off right, and we went around the corner, and there's a fan there. He's like, "Oh, Matt, David." And we were like, "What?" It's like, do I know you? And it was just crazy. He was saying, he always watches this stuff, and it's just crazy, because I'm just me. Like, it's so weird when people kind of have that moment of shock, and it's kind of then you kind of start to realize that kind of what all this is. It's a community like that, and there's, like, people look up to you, or look up to me for some reason. I'm like, boy. And it's just kind of crazy, kind of humbling moment. And you kind of start to realize exactly the kind of impact this stuff can have on people.
Totally. Well, I wondered about it. I was like, I bet it's happened already. And how cool for those couple fans of yours and Spurs. But yeah, so tell us a little bit about your process. How do you stay up to date on all the stuff that's going on, especially in a summer like this, where you've got rumor after rumor about different managers, things that you think are going to happen, they all of a sudden they fall through. Even today, you just had your stream. We're recording on Sunday. This gets posted on Tuesday. Matt just did his stream and was talking about this most recent rumor that feels like it just popped out of nowhere. How do you keep up to date with all that?
It's tough. I'll be honest with you. It's really just a case of every evening, no matter whether I'm streaming or not, I sit down, I don't know if anyone uses TweetDeck, but I have like all the Spurs news aggregators from Twitter on there, who absolutely deserve more credit than I do for keeping on top of this stuff, because they're there within seconds. Like, Daily Hotspur, the Spurs Web, the Spurs Express, Tottenham Tears, THFC Report, all these guys. I sit down with my TweetDeck and I scroll through those, and I just kind of get all the reports and I put them into my own kind of stream notes, where I'll separate them off into every single day, and the reports on specific players and stuff like that, and try to keep some sort of order to all the things like that. But look, it gets really tough when you have, like, I didn't get to stream yesterday, and I was working late, so I actually didn't get to do it yesterday. So then trying to go back this evening to get 2 days worth of reports and kind of pluck out which ones are still kind of relevant from yesterday and all this. And it is a lot to keep on top of, especially when you have Paratici negotiating for 5 or 6 players at one time, and you're like, how can we possibly have this many players we're interested in? But it's a task, but I enjoy it, because I get to then share it with this community.
Of course. What do you think about his kind of method of doing transfers like this? Do you think it's a positive thing, or I don't know. There's times where I feel like a little concerned that maybe that player won't feel like, if they're not the first choice, do Spurs really want them here? But at the same time, it seems like it might be really helpful. What are your thoughts?
I think there's definitely pros and cons to it. And if we're going to be, interested in players like Nikola Milenkovic and Kurt Zouma, who are very good defenders, but end up with Christian Romero, I feel there has to be some sort of method to this madness. And it is one of those things that will kind of be completely dependent and completely judged on the results. But I especially liked the way the Brian Hill deal happened. And it was very interesting, because the day before the Hill deal was first in the media, I was doing a stream with Fabrizio Romano, and I was asking him about Paratici and kind of all the stuff that he does. And he mentioned, kind of his own accord, he mentioned this deal that the Paratici got done last year. And he was effectively saying he does negotiate for these 5, 6, 7 players in order to, kind of get, rather than inquiring and being told a random price, to get the exact price this club will want. And at times that is to figure out the best player that's there. But it also sometimes plays his way to distract the media so he can go around the other side and get a deal done for a different player. And he mentioned Weston McKennie from Schalke to Juventus last season. A deal that was like done within 24 hours. And then the next day, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Brian Hill to Tottenham, here we go. So there's so many different ways that this kind of works out for us. And it's just interesting because I love transfers almost as much as I love the ball on the pitch. But it's just fascinating. Something different,
It is totally different. I was thinking about how by doing it in this way, it's also very clever because he can almost say, if so, for example, with Romero, he's basically got like a couple other center back possibilities that he could say, hey, here's a ready-made deal. We've kind of already made this deal. If you guys want to use it and work with it, it almost seems like it's really helpful, but it's only based on results. If you end up not with who you want, then, but that's kind of what happened with the manager situation. I was really frustrated by how he treated Fonseca. I didn't feel like that was, I mean, as a fan of Spurs, I didn't like the way that shook out. It's like you have something already, it's literally to the line. I think his wife was posting things like, see you later, like we're leaving. And then all of a sudden he just pulled right back out of that. I don't know. Sometimes that feels harsh, maybe.
Yeah, but, definitely. I do think there's kind of an element of ruthlessness to the way he goes about things. But at the end of the day, his priority has to be Tottenham. And if he felt Gattuso was the better appointment, he definitely could have gone about it a better way. But I'm glad he's doing that for us and not to us. I'll say that much.
That's for sure. That is for sure. All right. So we're going to talk about Spurs a little bit more, but also wanted to ask you a little about, you're a senior analyst for Stats Perform in Opta. What has that been like? I know you said you covered leagues in China and things like that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's this crazy job that was probably my dream job that I thought maybe 10, 15 years down the line I could end up with. But here I am at 20 and been lucky enough to be in a job like that, which is crazy. And actually on the day this goes out, it's going to be 1 year since I started that job. But
wow,
it is essentially just kind of live production supervisor for Opta's coverage of the Chinese Super League with the EFL League 1 and 2, which return on Saturday. There's like Norwegian top division, Belgian top 2 divisions, and all these leagues kind of spread around the world. And it's just fun. It really is. At the end of the day, it's a job, and there are the kind of cons to it. But being able to actually go in 30 hours a week and sit down in an office and get paid to watch football and research football and all this stuff, it's the dream. It really is. And I think this kind of goes back to how much I love football. That I go into work and I watch football, then I come home and I go on the internet and I talk about football. Then after that, I'll go and I watch the 8:00 Premier League game, and then I'll play FIFA with my housemates. So it's just football all the time. That's definitely a job that kind of widens my knowledge of kind of leagues that people wouldn't quite know about. I remember I put up a tweet a few days ago when there was some signing that Anderlecht made. I forget who they bought in, and I tweeted, this is a signing they need. They looked a bit sluggish on the front foot when they lost in the opening day of the season to Union St. Gilloise. And someone replied to me, he's like, how the hell do you know this? It's like, because I have to. I actually have to. Yeah,
that's awesome. I feel like as hearing about your childhood a little bit today too, and just how much you love football and would watch. I mean, that does sound like the dream job, to be doing that, to be doing this Spurs channel. It sounds like a real dream come true. Is there any other teams that you support outside of Spurs, or maybe don't support but just kind of follow or keep close tabs on?
Yeah, I suppose through the job as well, there would be Plymouth Argyle in the League One. Because before I became a senior analyst, I was just a normal analyst. So I don't actually analyze games, but I kind of supervise the analysis of them. Whereas before that, I was supposed to be analyzing them. And you get kind of assigned teams for different leagues. And my one for League One or League Two at the time was Plymouth. So I spent, it was actually at the beginning of the pandemic that I started training in them. So I started probably January of 2020. And then just as we were about to get into live production, obviously COVID hit and all that, so everything was called off. So I spent maybe 6-7 months, 3-4 times a week analyzing Plymouth games from like last season. And when you watch a team like that much and you get to know them, and you kind of follow the players on Twitter just to keep up the tabs, you kind of do come into some sort of, I wouldn't say a love or a proper support, but you grow kind of fond of them, and you keep an eye on how they're getting on. So I suppose just from that, I do like Plymouth. And my local team as well, Trinity United. Kind of have to say I like them, even though I don't really watch them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That happens. That's cool. So awesome. Well, so we've got a little bit of the background. Let's talk a little bit more deeply about Spurs. It's been such a we had the merry-go-round of managers. Now we've got a couple signings coming in. We've had Lamela leave and Toby. Yeah, what are your thoughts on how things have gone so far?
I think it's been a very good start to what is going to be a very long project. And the way I've kind of been able to describe this is I don't see where Tottenham are at the moment as the beginning of the Nuno Espirito Santo era, or we're not going into Nuno's time or anything. I feel like Nuno is just a very important cog in the early stages of Paratici's time at Tottenham and the Paratici era that I think we're going to go into. And it may just be, again, my love of the transfers and me thinking he's the greatest thing on the planet. But I do think there is going to be a lot of time before Spurs get to the level that we want to be at. And there's going to be a few setbacks. But we've made a very solid start. And I think it's just so important looking at us now that we're in the Conference League, that we're looking like we're going to lose Kane, if not this summer, next summer. Yet still we're able to attract players like Christian Romero and Lautaro Martinez, who apparently would be open to move to Tottenham if the right bid came in and things like that. So I think it's showing the club does still have the pull and does still have the attraction to these players that could very well be playing Champions League football. And it's a bit of a positive to take from what has been a very negative 18 to 24 months since that Champions League final against Liverpool. But we're off to a good start. I think what we need immediately is someone to play alongside Romero and someone a bit higher up the pitch. But I wouldn't be too concerned if we don't get more than that, because we've January, we've next summer, and we've a while to kind of turn things around.
Yeah. So I like the way you're saying that. It's almost like thinking of it's the Paratici era. There's the hashtag let Paratici cook. So I'm assuming you're in that camp of saying like, just let this guy do his thing.
Absolutely. He's Don Fabio. That's what I've been calling him for the last 2 weeks. He's the man who has finally come in and actually managed to take the reins away from Daniel Levy. Which, regardless of your opinion, if you're Levy in, Levy out, or you're kind of indifferent, the fact that we have a man coming in who has experience at this top level of making some of the biggest signings in football history, that he's coming in from Daniel Levy, who you have to say has failed on the transfer side of things when you look at the Jack Grealish deal at Milan Skriniar with Paulo Dybala. The fact that this man who is the man who managed to tempt Ronaldo away from Real Madrid, is the man who brought in Andrea Pirlo, Paul Pogba, Lucio, all these players on free transfers. He knows what he's doing. And one of my favorite kind of stories of Paratici, I remember watching on one of Fabrizio Romano's live streams on Twitch with Francesco Porzio. And they were saying a few years back, maybe 3-4 years ago, Fabio Paratici he was in Milan just eating a dinner, as he does always out in some restaurant. And whenever he had his meal, all was grand. He left the restaurant, and the waiters went over to clear his table, and there was just a piece of tissue that was there that you could see he'd been kind of scribbling on. And he listed out some of these players. And there was the likes of names I didn't even come to. I think Nicolo Zaniolo was there. There was a few players who, at the moment, Mary Demiral, I think, was another name. Who right now you're looking at kind of the biggest players, biggest young players in world football, the most best future prospects. Whereas at that time, Demiral was playing in the Turkish second division, and Zaniolo was probably in the Roma Youth Academy and stuff like that. And it just, for me, it goes to show the broad knowledge he has of football and the in-depth understanding of what it takes for a young player to actually make it in something like that. That he spotted this before anybody else, and now I'm looking at him being the one bringing in Brian Hill from Sevilla. I'm thinking he has to be the next Messi. Paratici is getting him, and no one can tell me any different.
Totally. Well, and so that's when you think of his work, that was maybe some of the concerns, though, is like he brings in these great players, but he doesn't always move on players very well. Spurs are, I would say they've got a lot of dead wood. They've got a lot of players that have been here for a while. The whole team needs a decent refresh. We've seen Lamela go. We've seen Toby go. Who do you think follows them out? Who do you want to see go out? And then who do you think is probably likely to leave?
There's a lot of answers I could give to that question. I do think it was important to move Lamela on. I'm not sure now was the right time for Toby to go, because ideally, if I could pick a centre back realistically right now that could play alongside Romero, it would probably be Alderweireld. But I think in terms of his ability to get people out, I think we have kind of seen his shortcomings within this, in that the only deals he's really managed to get done are either in buying players or to people that he knows. So with Toby going to Alderweireld a few years ago, he sold Mehdi Benatia from Juventus to Alderweireld, so had those contacts already. Of course, Lamela going on that swap deal for Hill. I think we're seeing the same maybe with the bid that was apparently made to Sevilla for Jules Koundé, and that Davinson Sanchez was included in that. And I'm looking at Fabrizio Romano saying we want to sell Sissoko, but there's no one interested. We want to sell Harry Winks, but there's no one willing to meet our valuation and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose there is a bit of a concern there. But I think when it comes down to him actually genuinely needing to sell players to raise the funds to get people in, I think he'll kind of get working a little bit better in that. And it's a different challenge at Spurs than what he had at Juve. Because totally. With Juve, you could sign a player for 50 million, sell him the next year for 10. Right. If he hasn't played well, you get another for 50 million because the money's always there. But I think in terms of players that are there now that need to go, oh God, how long have we got? Sanchez, I think, needs to move on because I feel as though he'll be an important departure to fund the next centre-back we bring in. I think Aurier, I think his time is up. I think Harry Winks has probably been given enough chances to prove himself. And you could put Dele Alli in that same bracket, but the reason why I don't think it's urgent for him to go is that his peak was a lot higher than Harry Winks's. And Winks, I think, showed he was a good system player maybe in a few years under Poch, whereas Dele Alli is an exceptionally talented individual that is just kind of struggling to get that form. So I'd give Ali maybe another year. But urgently, Sanchez, Aurier, Winks, maybe one of those front men in Bergwijn, Lucas, Jack Clark, and is there another one there? There probably is. So I think we're a bit overloaded there without too much quality. So I think maybe if we get two of those out, bring in another one to play up there, I think could be great for us.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Ndombele just not being in any of the matches for preseason? Do you think that's something to be concerned about, or do you think that's just, he's maybe taking a little bit longer to get back into form?
I think it's only concerning because of the fitness issues he's had in the past. Sure. Like I know he played with, I think it was Guingamp in France, and they released him or sold him for very cheap because he was never fit. And he was overweight, and they couldn't afford to pay a player who couldn't get out in the football pitch.
Right.
And I think we've kind of seen that with Ndombele this season. To put it kindly, he was a bit chunky when he came back to preseason training, which you never want in one of your players in the middle of the park who kind of relies on his physicality and his
I guess
fitness.
He could use his body weight,
just bodying players left, right, and center. But even last season when he was at what you could argue was his peak fitness, he was still being dragged off 60, 65 minutes into every game. And I remember seeing a thing that was kind of comparing his style of play to how ice hockey players play. And I know nothing about ice hockey, but they were saying kind of using that low center of gravity he used to spin past players and kind of body people off. It's really physically demanding and can drain your energy a lot faster. But for me, if that's the way he plays, be fitter and be able to do it for 90 minutes. Otherwise, kind of adapt your game and kind of become a more kind of longevity player, if that makes sense.
Right.
But in terms of him missing the preseason, it's really concerning. And I think Nuno's comments after the game against Arsenal, I think went even further when he said he's not injured, but he's just not ready to play. He's not at a stage where we can put him on the pitch now. And when we're already missing Harry Kane for the start of the season, and we're a bit weak in the midfield because we haven't brought any players in there, he's the type of player that you need in there. And I love Oliver Skip and I love Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. I think they're both really good footballers. But beside each other, together, I think they're just too similar. That they're both kind of that midfield enforcer who has that little bit of progressive ability as well. But beside each other, I think they just kind of clash more than they complement each other. And that's where I'd look for an Ndombele or a Lo Celso to come into that team. And I just think Ndombele is better because for me, he's the closest thing we'll get to Moussa Dembele in terms of style. Like I never think we'll find a player that will beat Dembele for quality because he, for me, is possibly the most underrated midfielder that has ever played for Tottenham and in the Premier League even. So it's concerning with Ndombele, and especially because he's just one of those players that I think we need urgently back in that team.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's going to be finding someone who can break through in the midfield. Lo Celso has struggled with his injuries and such. And I was giving him a really hard time at the end of the season. Maybe I need to apologize, but I felt like he was
never backtrack.
He was letting me down. And that there was that one moment where he literally just dribbled out of bounds. And I was like, what are we doing right now? So I definitely do think, it is a concern for me. I don't know. I hope that doesn't mean he's on his way out. It doesn't sound like there's any rumors for that. I'm with you on Sissoko. I'm glad to see Lamela has been able to move on. Aurier for sure needs to go. He's basically said as much for the last 2 seasons that he doesn't really want to be here. And so I'm happy to see him move on. And that leads us to another name that sounds like he doesn't really want to be here, Harry Kane. You seem like someone who thinks he will go this summer. There's others that are saying, Levy, Paratici are going to dig in their heels. But are you thinking this is going to be it? He's not going to play against City. Obviously, he's not going to be ready. But before the end of this transfer window, we might see his sale.
I'm actually the complete opposite, to be honest.
Oh,
I've
really?
been saying, yeah, I've been saying all summer that I think he's going to stay, and I've been
Oh, I'm sorry.
slated for it, and I've been abused by opposition fans for it. Some people who I call friends. But look, it's I think the situation has played out in a very similar way to what we all expected until Harry Kane didn't show up for preseason training.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any Spurs fan out there who is or even can be surprised that he wants to go, because
No.
he is, for me, the second best striker in world football behind
Yep.
Lewandowski, just because he scored 41 goals last season.
Sure.
But for someone of his ability and of his even kind of his brand in what he has become, for him to be playing in the third tier of European football is laughable.
Yeah.
It really is. And as much as we want to sit here and say, oh no, he's a Spurs fan, he's been here for 17 years, he loves the club more than anything, he does. He definitely does love this football club. But he also needs to prioritize his own career and his own personal interests, because like, he is one of the greatest players, if not the best player that's played in his football club, and can go on to be one of the best in Premier League history, and he deserves a Premier League trophy. And I said kind of up until the last couple of weeks that I would not begrudge Harry Kane a move whatsoever. And if he moved on to Manchester City, I'd be happy for him. And I'd want him to go on and win that Premier League title with them, because Spurs aren't going to be in that race realistically.
Right.
But with the way he's gone about the last week, I feel, maybe we do want to just spite him and keep him at the club for another year, because you shouldn't not turn up for training. You signed a 6-year contract.
It's so true. I feel like having not shown up and doing the whole like kind of he said, she said, it's like it's his word against the club's word. It's really dividing to do that. It feels like you're basically making the fans make a choice to say, do I believe Levy or do I believe you? Or do I believe the club and do I believe you? And I feel like even in his statement, kind of, I wouldn't say blaming the fans, but almost like saying like he was surprised that people were frustrated with him or something like that. I felt like that was poor. I don't know who is if it's all his brother or whoever is the one that's kind of behind all of this. But yeah, it doesn't seem like the right way to go. He should have put a a release clause of some sort in that 6-year contract if that's what he really was hoping for. Do you think that if he does stay, what does this season look like for him? I kind of hear it with you and I kind of feel it myself. Are we going to be singing He's One of Our Own? Are we going to be feeling that sentiment towards him, throughout this season?
I feel like there's some fans who will, but I also feel like there's some fans who will boo him when he gets out in the Tottenham Hotspur pitch for the first time this season. And look, every fan is entitled to their own opinion, and every fan obviously can warrant and are allowed to have their say and things like that. But I feel within football, and it's not a criticism of anybody, it's just because it's a sport that kind of provokes so much passion and so much emotion within people. And it's what I love most about it, is a lot of the time it can be difficult to be balanced within your opinion. It can be hard not to kind of fall into either extreme like that, where you could have been someone who loved Harry Kane all along. You could have wanted him to go, wanted him to say whatever it is, but within this, you could have fallen into this mindset that he has absolutely betrayed the club and he's 100% to blame, and you could be going out booing him in the first game of the season, where someone who up until 3 weeks ago agreed with you and everything could have believed his statement over what the club said, and they could be the ones chanting he's one of our own going into the season. Whereas I just feel he's just another player now. In the past, he was the face of this football club. He was our main man, but he's kind of broken a bit of that relationship with the club and with the fans. I think that statement only made things worse for him, because I think it brought up more questions than it answered. But I just feel like he's just another player now. And of course, in terms of quality, he's going to be the best in that team. And
totally,
in terms of how he's going to perform, I wouldn't be surprised if this goes on to be his best season for Spurs, because yes, his professional nature has been questioned with the last 7 or so days, him not turning up to training and things like that. But going back to how he has his personal interests kind of at heart and things like that, he wants to break Alan Shearer's record as the highest goal scorer in Premier League history. He can't afford to give up a season in that. He needs every season for the rest of his career to be 20 to 30 goal season. And this season is included in that. So if he's at Tottenham, it might hurt him to be there. It might hurt him to see Jack Grealish lifting the Premier League trophy for Villa or for City at the end of the season. But he's still going to go out and try banging 30 goals because he knows he can beat that record.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's true. It's it's hard to imagine Harry Kane as just being one of the players. I almost feel like Sonny has kind of superseded him recently in terms of, he liked that Instagram post that was
that was a moment, all right.
Yeah. I mean, where basically the post was saying like, no players bigger than the club. If you never saw the post, no players bigger than the club. And yeah, Sonny liked it, like basically showing a picture of Kane when they were talking about that. And yeah, I do feel like he's just kind of become, it's like, okay, well, if it's a business to you, if we are just a transaction, then we will kind of see it that way as well. I was thinking, I wrote in my notes here that Harry Kane was acting like Gandalf the Grey, like he only arrives when he means to, and that just did not go over well with anyone. And I don't think it's gonna leave. I think that will just be a black eye for him for a long time. So that means that Lloris is probably in his last season for Spurs. Kane is most likely in his last season for Spurs. Who takes the captain's armband? Like I would have always thought Harry Kane. It's going straight to him. But who do you think steps into that role? Do you think it's this guy right here, Pierre? Do you think it's someone else?
I think it has to be Højbjerg. And he just is captain material. Like I remember one of his first games at Spurs, he put in a tackle on the halfway line that looks like it means nothing, but he got up and he starts celebrating as if he just scored a goal. And it's that passion. I know a lot of people kind of said about Eric Lamela when he left Tottenham that the quality wasn't always there, the end product wasn't always there, but he played the game like a fan. That he went out and he chased down every single ball, and every now and then he tried to snap an Arsenal player's leg. And I think Højbjerg is that same player. And
totally.
I don't know if anyone saw his post-match interview today, and I don't have the quotes to hand, but he was basically saying, I will give absolutely everything I've got to this football club. Right. And every player in this dressing room should be the same. And he just seemed like that type of character that, he could leave Spurs today and end up playing for Luton Town in the Championship, and he'll still be like that. He'll give absolutely everything for the jersey that he's wearing. And the fact that we've managed to get something like that into our club, and he so quickly has fallen in love with the club, I think that's something we have to hold on to. And if he's the man given that pre-game kind of pump up in the dressing room, I think every Spurs game we're going to give maybe 5% more within that game, because it's hard not to hear this guy, this absolutely massive built guy who you're probably terrified of screaming at you in the dressing room, telling you to go out and give 100%.
Well, even today with the confrontation he had with Arteta was super interesting to see, right? Because he like comes in, he kind of gives Arteta a little bit of crap about being too close to the touchline, and Arteta shushes him, which was like, all right, this is a friendly, but I guess it's not friendly. I mean, we all knew it wasn't going to be, but then Højbjerg approached him, and Arteta backed up.
He's like, I don't want this. I don't want this.
Yeah. And I think he like, it just shows, Højbjerg just takes no prisoners. He's got no concern. Like, if you're going to shush me out, let's have a conversation about it, like man to man or something like that. It's kind of incredible to see his great love for, I think he just loves the sport of it so much. And like you said, this is the badge he's wearing. I feel like he immediately came in. I think there was a report that he like texted Reguilon or something like that, was like, welcome, I hope you're ready to go. This was like they were brought in the same transfer window. But it just shows how much he is a professional, and I think too he'll definitely have a shot at having that armband. So we're gonna wrap this up pretty soon here. I wanted to ask though, the season starts a week from today. We're up against Manchester City. Let's start by talking about first that match, and then let's make way too early predictions, right? We have no idea. The transfer window isn't even closed yet. We don't know who's going to be in or out, but let's try to pretend that we know what's going to happen. But let's start with that Manchester City match. It sounds like De Bruyne and Foden will be out. Kane will not be able to play in that match. So it's a little bit more maybe up for grabs than you might imagine. What do you think happens on that first match?
God, I don't want to say it. Look, Man City, I think, have the strongest squad that I've ever seen in the Premier League. I remember sitting down watching that Carabao Cup final and looking at the 9 players on their bench and thinking they would beat the starting 11 that we're going to. Despite being 2 players kind of less, it's just bizarre the strength they have. And last season, De Bruyne was a miss for them at times, but they always felt as though they could just throw Foden into that role. And despite his relative inexperience and his age, he was able to make the same things tick. And I feel now, with both of them out, just throw Jack Grealish in there. Because whatever it is, they just have that player who can go in. And look, they're missing a striker. I do think they do need a striker. I don't think Jesus is that man, but they need to replace Aguero. I don't think they get Kane, of course. And maybe them not having that could be a bit of a a downfall for them in this game on Sunday. But it's just hard to look at their squad and realistically predict anyone will go out and beat them. Not even just Tottenham. The only team that I'd sit here and say maybe realistically you can predict and honestly predict a win for them is Chelsea. But Spurs, I don't think we're at that level. We haven't brought in enough players. I was hoping we get our business done earlier, but of course all the situation with the manager kind of prevented that from happening. We need to be 100% on our A game to stand a chance in this. And Romero, he's apparently is kind of recovering from a ligament injury he picked up in the Copa America, so he might not be fit. And then we're playing Dyer and Sanchez, who, despite playing well against Arsenal today, I do think it has to be said, just aren't what you'd want to start against the Premier League champions. So I'd be expecting maybe 2-3 goal defeat in this one. And I hate being negative like that, but I also kind of want to be honest. And you also have to remember it's Nuno's first competitive game, and it's going to be kind of a period for these players to settle in. A lot of time with the new manager, you get this honeymoon period. Yeah. But I feel like when the manager's been appointed a month and a half before the start of the season, that kind of fades away with preseason and all that stuff. So I'm not looking forward to the game on Sunday. I'm glad I'm working and I won't be able to watch it. And that's probably the best indication of my feelings that I could give.
Yeah. I feel like I completely agree with all that you're saying in terms of Manchester City are becoming a team that is almost unplayable. Like, how do you play against them? And even without having a striker, they won the league. I mean, they didn't have a striker last year. So if they're able to win the league without a striker, and they're bringing in guys like Jack Grealish, and it's just like, they're a force to be reckoned with. That being said, I think meeting them in the first match of the season, meeting them with a couple of those players out still recovering from the Euros and whatnot, this is our best chance at getting any sort of points from playing them. So I think I'm gonna I'll watch for you, Matt, and I'll let you know how it goes. I'm sure.
do I await your analysis.
But okay, so that's the first match, but let's get way ahead of ourselves here and let's talk about the season as a whole. We don't know everybody that's coming in. We don't know everybody that's going out, but you have seen some of the moves already. We've got Romero that's in. It looks like Kane's going to be staying. Let's just assume a couple of those things and say, where do you see Spurs? Initially, before we brought in anyone, let's ask that question. Where would Spurs have finished if you just heard Nuno's been appointed? Best of luck.
God.
It would have been way worse, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think we're lucky to get top half of the table, to be honest, if we just gone with that. It's definitely gone up. And first of all, we wouldn't be football fans if we weren't predicting something that we don't really know about because of the transfer window and all that. If we're not getting ahead of ourselves, what are we even doing here?
That's right.
But yeah, look, I haven't said that. It sounds stupid to say. It really matters what we do in the rest of the transfer window. But kind of what we're expecting to do, I don't expect us to be challenging for the top four. And I suppose I'm okay with that to some extent because as much as we can look at the quality or in certain positions lack thereof in that Spurs team and kind of estimate where we're going to finish based on that, I feel like we need to kind of temper our expectations a little bit because the Premier League this year, the top four, this is the first time in my lifetime where I can remember going into a season and being, I'll be shocked if the top four isn't United, City, Liverpool, Chelsea.
Yeah,
because of the strength in their teams and the way three of those four are strengthening this summer. So I think regardless of who we get in, top four is going to be a really, really big ask. And I'd be very surprised if we're almost even in that race. But I think fifth, sixth is a realistic expectation and one that we can almost demand, if that makes sense. Because Leicester, fantastic team. Arsenal, wasted everybody's time. Everton, depends on how things go with Carlo Ancelotti, or with Benitez rather, after Ancelotti's departure. But I think top six should be the aim. And it may seem a little bit negative, but we also have to be realistic. And just getting back into the Europa League, which is weird to say that's kind of a progress from this season. It hurts, but let's take the next step forward. Yeah,
for sure. And I think, even going back to what you said about the Paratici era, right? It's like this is just getting started. In some ways, it just seems like, okay, so we've got Kane for one more season. We almost don't have to kill ourselves to get top four so that he stays. It's not like do or die and you're just being so desperate, but instead you can actually like settle into who's here. Kane, like you said, he's going to play super, super well because he wants those accolades. He wants to, break Shearer's record. But yeah, I think my hopes are higher than they were certainly even a week and a half ago. Having gotten Romero over the line, I was afraid to even get my hopes up, even though we were getting here we goes and everything. It was like, so is Fonseca.
Yeah, true.
But anyway, so having brought in one center back is huge. Like you said, if we can, I believe that he's wanting to bring in another center back and potentially a right back. And I think that was so obviously our biggest issue was our back line. So hopefully that can happen. I'm gonna go with you, but I'm gonna say I might be a little more positive in the sense that I think we're gonna end up in Europa, but we're gonna flirt with the top 4 a little bit. I think it'll be there a little bit. But yeah, I will say this. I saw a tweet from it's the Men in Blazers, who are a show over here on NBC Sports. They were saying Leicester are run just so incredibly well, and their ownership are loved by their fans, right? Like there's just so much to look at and say, wow. And they had left Tottenham out of the conversation. They were talking about Everton, Wolves, and I can't remember who else, but just saying like some of these other teams that like, don't you like, you have the support of your supporters. Don't you wish that you were run better, basically? And I have this feeling, like you're saying, this season, I'm not saying it's a waste. I think there's a lot of ways we can progress, but I don't think we should get our hopes too high. But that's what we always do. Okay, so top 6, it sounds like, and then any silverware. Do you see any silverware on the horizon for Spurs this season? Or I mean, we're in the Conference League, bro. Come on.
Yeah. So many people ask me this question, right? And the only answer I can give you is I hope we win the Conference League and we have a great chance, but I also expect us to end up playing Jose Mourinho's Roma in the final. Whatever way it pans out, we could somehow have them in our group and end up, still beating the final. Whatever it is, I just feel like it's written in the stars for Tottenham to face Jose Mourinho's Roma in the final. And then who's going to win that? Roma could play their under 23s, but it's Jose in a final. And Jose trying to get revenge on a team he used to manage. I'm really scared about that.
Jose getting revenge on a team that fired him before a final.
Exactly. And he's still having digs like, I never thought. What did he say? He's won something and a half trophies. Yeah, because he counts the Tottenham Carabao Cup final as half a trophy. The delusions that
he's such a character. He's such a character. But I also think that like it's true though. I mean, I would never advise anyone to feel bad for Jose Mourinho ever. But that was the one moment where I kind of felt bad for him because it's like he had brought them to the final. I think, Levy put all his eggs in the Super League basket and thought, I'm just going to slide in firing Jose Mourinho on the weekend.
So that goes under the radar.
Yeah. And it's like, it kind of did in some ways. And then you end up with Ryan May. Yeah.
Yeah, it was such a weird thing there. I remember for maybe 2-3 weeks before, like I've never say I'm Jose out because I feel like someone in, someone out are kind of almost kind of agenda driven sort of debates and things like that. But I was of the opinion that he probably shouldn't be in the job next season. And it was after the United game when they made us 3-1 at the Tottenham stage. It was like, okay, he needs to go. I think Jose needs to be sacked in this. And it was maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks where saying, okay, Jose needs to be sacked. And then he was sacked. I was like, why'd you do that? Why have you done that? We're 6 days out from a cup final. Early. Not only do we have the best knockout competition manager in world history, in my opinion, but he's also the only manager who's ever beaten Pep Guardiola in a final. Right. And you're deciding to get rid of him. And then you end up in that final with, as you mentioned, Ryan Mason and his one win in 2 games managed compares to Guardiola's like 650 wins in 900 games managed. You're like, we don't stand a chance here.
That I did feel... I think I saw that graphic because they said 1 win in 2 games managed. He was in the second game he was managing though. So it's like, it's almost like you're making him look like 50%, but he's actually 100%.
He's 100. It's an interesting graphic, that's for sure.
So it's totally. Well, this has been such a pleasure, Matt. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man. You've got some stuff coming up though. Tell us what's coming up even this week for your channel.
Yeah, transfers, and that's the the majority of what it'll be. I aim to stream 7 o'clock every night. Just kind of giving a transfer roundup, whether I'm working or something. I know on Tuesday and it's going out. I'm working Tuesday evening, so there won't be a transfer show then unless something big happens when I stream like 11 o'clock my time. I'm hoping to have Fabrizio Romano back on the channel on Thursday, so that may be of interest to some people.
Yeah.
But then we have our watch-alongs back for the Premier League season, of course, starting Sunday as well. So it's going to be busy, but very different types of content for whatever anyone watching does enjoy.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Matt, and everyone who's watching. We like to say thanks so much for watching as ever. It was great talking with you.